He heard a faint cry under a bridge, and 2 days later, a courtroom decided whether those girls would finally belong or disappear again. A billionaire with everything stood against a system that didn't even recognize their names. 2 little girls who never asked for love, only asked for a place where they wouldn't be told to leave. And what they held in their hands wasn't a toy, wasn't food. It was a list, a survival list, written by children who already knew how the world works. But when the truth came out, it wasn't just heartbreaking. It was unforgivable. If stories like this touch your heart, take a moment to subscribe. There are many more waiting for you. The rain fell steady over the city, washing the streets in silver and silence. Late that night, beneath a cold concrete bridge on the edge of downtown Chicago, a black luxury sedan slowed to a quiet stop. Inside sat Cashin Vale, a self-made billionaire. CO. A man who built an empire from nothing, and learned, along the way, how to live without needing anyone. Or so he believed. Then he heard it. A sound so small, it almost didn't exist. A child crying. Cashin didn't speak right away. He leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowing, listening. Again. This time, clearer. Not one voice. 2. One crying softly, the other whispering, trying to calm her. Not like a parent. Like a child pretending to be one. "Stop the car," Cashin said quietly. The driver hesitated for half a second, then pulled over. Cashin stepped out into the rain. Cold water soaked through his polished shoes instantly, but he didn't notice. Something inside him had already shifted. Under the bridge, the air felt different. Still. Heavy. Forgotten. Cashin walked slowly, his footsteps echoing against the concrete. Then he saw them. 2 little girls. 5 years old, maybe. Huddled together under a small dry patch that wasn't really dry at all. Their clothes were clean, but worn. Their sneakers were tired, like they had walked too far for bodies that small. One of them clutched a torn backpack tightly to her chest. The other held a folded piece of paper under her hoodie, protecting it from the rain like it was something precious. Cashin stopped a few feet away. He didn't rush. Didn't startle them. He crouched down slowly, lowering himself to their level. "Hey," he said gently. The crying stopped. 2 small faces lifted toward him. Not scared. Not panicked. Just careful. Like they were deciding whether he was safe, or just another adult who would tell them to leave. "I'm not here to hurt you," Cashin said softly. "Are you okay?" The girl with the backpack didn't answer. She leaned closer to the other one. The girl holding the paper swallowed, then spoke in a voice so polite, it almost didn't belong to a child. "We're fine." Cashin felt something tighten in his chest. Fine. He had heard that word in boardrooms, in business deals, in conversations where people hid the truth. But hearing it here, from a child sitting under a bridge in the rain, it felt different. "What are your names?" he asked. The girl with the paper hesitated, then said quietly, "Nova." The other one followed, even softer. "Lenny." Cashin nodded slowly. "Those are beautiful names," he said. They didn't smile. They just watched him. "Do you have someone I can call?" he asked. "Your mom, dad, anyone?" The girls exchanged a look. A silent conversation. Then Lenny shook her head. "We're waiting," she said. Cashin frowned slightly. "Waiting for who?" Lenny looked down. "For a place." Nova lifted her chin just a little. "A place that doesn't send us away." The words landed heavier than they should have. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just truth. And somehow that made it worse. Cashin took a slow breath. "Have you been here long?" "Sometimes," Nova said. "Not when it's busy," Lenny added. Cashin glanced around. Empty. Cold. invisible to the world. Are you hungry? He asked. Nova shook her head quickly. We're okay. But right then, Lenny's stomach made a quiet sound. She froze. Embarrassed. Cashin didn't react. Didn't smile. Didn't make it awkward. We'll get food, he said calmly. That's easy. Nova narrowed her eyes slightly. Food costs money. Cashin nodded. It does. She studied him. Then why would you buy it for us? Cashin looked at them for a long second. Then answered simply. Because you're kids. A pause. And kids shouldn't have to plan how to survive the rain. Lenny's grip tightened around the paper in her hands. Like that sentence meant something more than he realized. Cashin stood slowly. Come with me, he said. Just for tonight. Somewhere warm. Safe. Nova whispered, uncertain. Safe is real. Cashin met her eyes. It can be. He held out his hand, not too close. Not forcing. Lenny didn't take it. Instead, she slowly unfolded the paper she had been protecting. Carefully. Like it mattered. Cashin leaned slightly closer. What is that? He asked gently. Lenny glanced at Nova. Nova gave a small nod. And then, Lenny turned the paper toward him. Cashin's expression changed. Because what he saw wasn't a drawing. Wasn't a note. It was a list. Written in careful, uneven letters. A child's handwriting, trying very hard to be neat. Rain days, under Bridge Pillar 3. Cold days, bus station. Warm air. Sunny days, library steps. Not inside. If told to leave, say sorry, and go. Cashin didn't speak. For a moment, the world he knew, money, power, control, felt meaningless. Nova pointed at the last line. We don't argue, she said. Lenny added quietly. We're polite. Cashin swallowed hard. Not because of what they said, but because of what it meant. These weren't children waiting to be saved. These were children who had already learned how to disappear. And in that moment, Cashin Vale made a decision that would change everything. Not out of charity. Not out of guilt. But out of something deeper. Something he hadn't felt in years. Responsibility. Tonight, he said softly, you're coming with me. Nova stared at him. And tomorrow? Cashin didn't promise magic. He promised something stronger. Tomorrow we fix this. Lenny slowly folded the paper again. Held it close. And for the first time, there was the smallest shift in her eyes. Not trust. Not yet. But something close. And as the rain continued to fall, neither of them knew that in less than 48 hours, a decision would be made that could either give them a home or take everything away again. The ride away from the bridge was quiet. Not the kind of silence money creates, but the kind that comes when something fragile is trying not to break. Lenny and Nova sat close together in the back seat, their small shoulders touching, Cashin's scarf wrapped around both of them like a shared shield. Outside, the city lights stretched across the glass, long lines of gold and white, slipping past like time that never waited for anyone. Nova watched them carefully, counting, like each light mattered. Lenny didn't look outside. She watched Cashin's reflection instead, faint in the window, making sure he was still there, making sure he hadn't changed his mind. Cashin noticed it. If you need to stop me, he said calmly, you can say so. Nova blinked, confused. Why would we stop you? Cashin glanced at them through the mirror. Because this is your choice too. The words hung in the air. New. Unfamiliar. The girls exchanged a small look, as if quietly asking each other, is that real? Nova gave a slight nod, like she was storing the idea for later. Then Cashin asked gently, "Are you hungry?" Nova opened her mouth. Almost said no. Then stopped. Lenny answered instead. "A little." Cashin nodded. "A little is enough." They stopped at a small diner. Not expensive. Not crowded. Warm. That was enough. Cashin ordered simple food. Soup. Bread. Warm milk. Nothing overwhelming. Nothing that would make them feel out of place. He didn't sit too close. Didn't watch them too much. He gave them space. The kind of space they had never been given before. Nova took the first spoon of soup. Her eyes widened slightly. "It's hot." Cashin allowed himself a small smile. "It's supposed to be." Lenny broke the bread in half, carefully. Gave one piece to Nova before touching her own. Like it was a rule. Cashin saw it. He said nothing. But something inside him shifted again. Not pity. Not sympathy. Something deeper. Respect. Back in the car, the warmth stayed with them. Not just from the food. From something else. Something they didn't have words for yet. When they reached the penthouse, the doors opened quietly. No noise. No questions. Staff moved like shadows, respectful, distant. Trained not to stare. Trained not to make anyone feel small. So, Nova hesitated at the entrance. "This place," she whispered. "It's big." Cashin nodded. "It is." Lenny stayed close to her sister. "Do we have to be careful here?" Cashin looked at her. "Careful." That word again. "No," he said gently. "You don't have to be careful here." They didn't believe him. Not fully. Not yet. The guest room was ready. Soft light. Clean sheets. A small night lamp shaped like a moon glowing quietly in the corner. Nova stepped inside slowly. Touched the edge of the bed with one finger. Like it might disappear. "Is this for looking?" Cashin shook his head. "For sleeping." Lenny stood at the doorway. Still not moving. "Do we have to leave early?" she asked. The question wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional. It was routine. Expected. Cashin took a slow breath. "No one is asking you to leave tonight." Nova looked at Lenny. Lenny looked at the floor. Then Nova whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. "Then we can stay." Cashin nodded. "You can stay." And for the first time since he had met them, both girls exhaled at the same time, like they had been holding their breath for days. Maybe longer. Morning came softly. Sunlight slipped through tall windows, filling the room with warmth. Lenny woke first. Her eyes opened instantly. Alert. Aware. Like sleep was never deep, just a pause. Nova followed, slower. Then froze. Remembering. "Did we break a rule?" Nova whispered. Lenny looked around the room. Untouched. Clean. Nothing out of place. "I don't think so." A soft knock came at the door. Cashin. He didn't enter. Waited. The girls looked at each other, then nodded. "Good morning," he said, stepping in calmly. They stared at him. Waiting. For the condition. For the catch. For the moment where everything changed. Cashin smiled slightly. "I made a list." Nova stiffened. "Rules." "Yes," Cashin said. "But different ones." He placed a small card on the table. Lenny picked it up. "Read slowly. Eat when you're hungry." Nova leaned closer. "Sleep when you're tired." Lenny continued. "Ask questions when you're confused." Nova whispered the last one. "No one sends you away without explaining why." The room went quiet. Lenny looked up. Safe is Rule 4. Cashin nodded. Exactly. Nova frowned slightly. What if we make mistakes? Cashin didn't hesitate. Then we fix them. The girls exchanged a look. This rule didn't exist in their world before. Later, while they sat coloring quietly, their shoulders touching again, Cashin stepped into his office, closed the door, picked up his phone. His voice changed. Still calm, but sharper. "Noah," he said, "I need you here." There was a pause on the other end. What happened? Cashin looked through the glass wall, at two little girls sitting on the floor, drawing like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. "I found 2 5-year-olds under a bridge," he said quietly. "They have names." A beat. "They have no records." Silence. Then Noah's voice, more serious now. "Are they safe?" "Yes." "Did you report it?" Cashin's jaw tightened. "Not yet." Another pause. Then firm. "Cashin, we have to do this right." "I know," Cashin said. His eyes didn't leave the girls. "I just don't want them moved." Noah exhaled slowly. "The system doesn't wait for what we want." Cashin's voice lowered. "Then we move faster." There was a knock at the door later that morning. Not loud, not aggressive, but certain, unavoidable. Cashin opened it. A woman stood there. Professional. "Come," holding a folder close to her chest. "Mr. Vale," she said gently. "I'm Maris. Child Services." Cashin stepped aside immediately. "Thank you for coming." Inside, Lenny and Nova were already sitting on the couch, feet dangling, hands folded, like they knew what this moment meant, like they had practiced being small. Maris knelt down in front of them, smiled softly. "Hi." Nova tilted her head. "Are you a rule person?" Maris smiled. "Yes." A pause. "But I like kind rules." Lenny's voice was quiet. "Do we have to go now?" Maris glanced at Cashin. Just for a second. Then back at the girls. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "We're going to figure things out." But even as she said it, something shifted in the room. Something heavy. Something official. Something that didn't care about feelings. And for the first time since that morning, Nova's hand slowly reached for Lenny's again, because somewhere deep down, they both felt it. This wasn't just a visit. This was the beginning of something that could take everything away. Maris opened her folder slowly, careful not to rush the moment. She wasn't looking at paperwork yet. She was looking at them. Two small girls sitting side by side, already bracing for something they couldn't control. "Can you tell me your full names?" she asked gently. Lenny spoke first. "Lenny. Wren." Nova followed right after. "Nova Wren." Maris nodded, typing into her tablet. The soft tapping of her fingers filled the quiet room. She paused, typed again, then paused longer this time. Cashin noticed it immediately. That slight delay. That subtle shift professionals make when something doesn't line up. "What is it?" he asked calmly. Maris didn't answer right away. She looked at the screen again, then back at the girls. "I'm not finding active records," she said carefully. Nova frowned. "But we're here." Maris softened her tone. "I see you. But the system doesn't." Lenny's fingers tightened around her sleeve. "Is that bad?" Maris didn't lie. "It makes things complicated." Cashin stepped forward slightly. "What happens now?" Maris closed the tablet halfway. "We open an emergency intake," she said. "But until then, there are procedures." Cashin's voice stayed steady. Can they stay here? That question hung in the air. Simple, but heavy. Maris hesitated. Just for a second. There's a 48-hour window, she said quietly. After that, placement decisions become harder to change. Nova looked up at Cashin instantly, her eyes searching his face. Are we being sent away? Cashin didn't look at Maris. He didn't look at the tablet. He looked only at Nova, and answered with quiet certainty. No. A small pause. Not without a fight. The word fight didn't sound loud. It sounded grounded, like something real. Maris watched him carefully, measuring. Not his money, not his status, but his intent. Then we need to move quickly, she said. She sat at the dining table, working through forms, asking questions. Simple ones. Gentle ones. Favorite color? Blue, Nova said. Yellow, Lenny added. Do you remember a school? A doctor. Lenny shook her head slowly. We didn't stay. Maris nodded. No judgment. Just facts. Cashin stood nearby, hands folded, forcing himself not to interrupt. This wasn't a business deal. This wasn't something he could control with money or influence. This was something else. Something slower. Something fragile. Maris typed again, then paused. And when she spoke next, the air changed. There is an older record, she said. Cashin's head lifted. Older? Yes, Maris said. Incomplete. Never finalized. Nova tilted her head. What does that mean? Maris chose her words carefully. It means someone started something, but didn't finish it. She turned the tablet slightly toward Cashin. One line stood out. Guardian of Record, Dorian Pike. Cashin read it once. Then again. Who is he? Maris kept her voice neutral. A temporary guardian assigned during an early intake attempt. Nova frowned. Guardian means grown up? Yes. Nova thought for a moment, then said simply. He didn't help. There was no anger in her voice. No emotion. Just truth. Cashin felt his jaw tighten. If there was a guardian, he said, why are there no records now? Maris answered carefully. Because the process wasn't completed. No follow-up. No verification. Lenny's voice dropped to a whisper. So, we're missing? Maris looked directly at her. You're not missing. A pause. But the paperwork is. Cashin exhaled slowly. What does that mean for them? Maris closed the tablet fully now. It means there's a legal gap. Cashin repeated the words under his breath. A gap. Maris nodded. And gaps attract movement. Cashin's eyes sharpened. Movement. A transfer, she said quietly. The word landed like something final. Nova's shoulders stiffened. Elsewhere means not here. Maris didn't deny it. Cashin's voice lowered. Controlled. How long do we have? Maris met his eyes. 48 hours. The number echoed louder than anything else. Not because of what it was, but because of what it wasn't. Time. That evening, the penthouse felt different. Still quiet. Still warm. But underneath it, something was ticking. Cashin made calls. Noah returned. Documents started moving. Emails stacked. Everything accelerated. But in the middle of all that movement, Lenny and Nova became still. Too still. Cashin noticed it when dinner sat untouched. When coloring stopped halfway. When Nova suddenly asked, if we go somewhere else, will the rules be different? Cashin crouched in front of her. We don't know yet. Lenny looked down. That means yes. Cashin didn't answer. Because she wasn't wrong. Later that night, Cashin walked past the guest room. Something felt off. Too neat. Too quiet. He stepped inside. The bed was made. Pajamas folded. Shoes lined up. The backpack gone. His chest tightened instantly. He moved through the penthouse quickly now. Not panicked, but close. Then he found them. In the laundry room. Behind a rolling cart. Both girls sitting close together. Knees pulled in. The backpack between them. Packed. Ready. Cashin stopped. For a second, he didn't speak. Because he understood. They hadn't been told to leave. They just prepared. Nova looked up first. We're ready. Cashin's voice came out softer than he expected. Ready for what? Lenny answered quietly. So it's easier. Cashin stepped closer. Knelt down. Easier for who? Nova's voice wavered. For you. Lenny kept her eyes on the floor. You said rules matter. Nova swallowed. And papers make trouble. Lenny added softly. If we leave before, it won't be hard. The words didn't sound like fear. They sounded like practice. Like something they had done before. Cashin took a slow breath. Then another. No, he said firmly. But gently. You don't leave because adults are uncomfortable. Nova blinked. But that's how it works. Cashin shook his head. Not this time. He reached into the backpack slowly. Carefully. Pulled out the folded paper. Their survival list. He looked at it for a moment. Then set it aside. And took out a fresh sheet. We're making a new list, he said. He wrote slowly. Clearly. Today, stay. Tomorrow, stay. Day after, stay. Lenny stared at the words. That's allowed. Cashin looked at her. I'm making it allowed. Nova hesitated. What if the system says no? Cashin's voice didn't rise. It grounded. Then I say yes louder. The girls didn't smile. They didn't celebrate. They just relaxed. A little. Just enough. And for the first time that night, the backpack stayed closed. But somewhere far beyond that room. In offices and systems that didn't see faces. That 48-hour clock kept moving. And it wasn't slowing down. Morning came faster than it should have. Not because the sun rushed in, but because time felt shorter now. Noah arrived early, carrying more than just his laptop. He carried urgency. Files, notes, legal pads stacked with quiet pressure. Cashin met him in the living room, voice low. Tell me everything. Noah didn't sit. He placed the documents on the table and opened them with practiced precision. I've reviewed the record, he said. The Guardian listed Dorian Pike. He's a problem. Cashin folded his arms. In what way? Noah exhaled. Not in the way you'd expect. No criminal flags. No active abuse reports. Cashin's jaw tightened. Then what? Nothing, Noah said. Cashin frowned. That's the problem. A pause. No presence. No follow-up. No evidence he ever actually cared for them. Cashin glanced toward the other room. Lenny and Nova sat on the floor, coloring again. Close. Always close. Nova suddenly raised her hand slightly, like she was in school. Can I ask something? Noah turned, surprised for a second, then nodded. Of course. Nova looked at him carefully. Is nothing bad? Noah hesitated, then answered honestly. For kids, yes. The room fell quiet, because even she understood that. Maris returned mid-morning, her steps calm, her presence steady. She carried more forms, more timelines, more reality. "We need to move now," she said gently. "If we don't establish temporary caregiver authorization, the system will assign placement." Lenny looked at the calendar on the wall. She counted silently, then asked, "How many sleeps is 48 hours?" Maris knelt slightly. 2. Nova's fingers tightened around her crayon. "That's not many." Cashin felt that sentence hit deeper than anything else. Not many. 2 nights. That was all it would take for everything to change. Noah spoke, already typing. "I'll file an emergency petition today. That buys us protection." Maris nodded. "But it also notifies anyone with legal standing." Cashin's eyes sharpened. "Including him?" "Yes," Maris said quietly. "Dorian Pike will be informed." Nova looked up. "He's the paper grown up." Maris gave a small nod. "On paper, yes." Cashin straightened slightly. "Then we fix the paper." Noah looked at him carefully. "Cashin, this turns into a legal fight." Cashin didn't hesitate. "I can handle that." Noah's voice lowered. "They shouldn't have to." Cashin's gaze moved back to the girls. "They won't." The rest of the day moved fast. Calls, documents, signatures. But the faster everything moved, the quieter the girls became. Cashin noticed it again at lunch. Food sat untouched. Nova pushed her plate slightly. "Are we in the way?" Cashin's head turned immediately. "No." Lenny looked down. "People get busy when something is wrong." Cashin walked over, knelt between them. "Nothing is wrong with you." Nova frowned slightly. "Then why is everyone serious?" Cashin didn't lie. "Because we're fixing something that should have been done a long time ago." Lenny's voice dropped. "And fixing means moving." Cashin shook his head. "Not this time." That night, the penthouse felt smaller again. Not in space. In weight. Noah spread documents across the dining table, pointing at timelines, explaining steps. "Pike has just enough legal standing to slow us down." Cashin leaned back. "Slow isn't enough." "No," Noah said. "But it buys him time." Maris added quietly. "And time triggers protocol." Cashin looked toward the hallway, where Lenny and Nova were supposed to be asleep. "They won't be moved." Maris met his eyes. "Intentions don't override systems." Her words were soft, but they didn't bend. Later, Cashin walked into the guest room. Nova was asleep, curled on her side, clutching his scarf like it belonged to her now. Lenny was awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" Cashin asked quietly. Lenny didn't move. "Are we in trouble?" Cashin sat on the edge of the bed. "No." A pause. "Then why does it feel like it?" she asked. Cashin looked at her. Careful. Honest. "Because grown-ups made mistakes before," he said. "And we're fixing them now." Nova stirred slightly. Eyes half open. "Fixing takes time." "Yes." Another pause. Then Nova whispered, "Do we have time?" Cashin didn't answer right away, because that question didn't have an easy answer. Finally, he said softly, "We're making time." The next morning came with pressure. Maris returned with updates. "The emergency review is scheduled," she said. "When?" Noah asked. "Tomorrow afternoon." Cashin nodded slowly. "That's our window." "And Pike?" Cashin asked. Maris didn't soften it. "He's filed an objection." Nova, sitting nearby, hugged her knees. Does that mean he wants us? No one spoke. Not immediately. Cashin walked over, knelt in front of her. He wants control on paper, he said. That's not the same as wanting you. Nova processed that. Paper doesn't know us. No, Cashin said. But the court can. Lenny tugged at his sleeve. If the court says no. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Cashin looked at her. Steady. Grounded. You don't pack any more, he said. Not unless it's for a trip you choose. Nova tilted her head slightly. Like a vacation? Cashin smiled faintly. Exactly like that. The girls nodded slowly, like they were learning a new language, one where leaving wasn't the default. The rest of the day passed in quiet preparation. Noah finalized documents. Maris coordinated oversight. Cashin signed everything placed in front of him. Not like a billionaire closing deals. Like a man making a promise. In the playroom, Lenny and Nova sat on the floor, building something out of blocks. A house. Simple. 3 figures drawn beside it. Nova pointed. This one doesn't send people away. Lenny nodded. It has rules. Cashin stood at the doorway, watching, not interrupting. This was what they were fighting for. Not just safety. Not just shelter. But something deeper. Continuity. Belonging. A place where leaving wasn't always waiting in the background. The next morning came quietly. Too quietly. No rushing. No noise. Just that heavy stillness before something important. They arrived at the courthouse. Clean. Neutral. Cold in a different way. Lenny and Nova sat with their advocate. Feet dangling. Hands tightly linked. Cashin sat behind them. Present. Not hovering. Across the room. Dorian Pike sat calmly. Composed. Like this was just another appointment. Another piece of paperwork. Cashin watched him. Studied him. And understood something clearly. This man wasn't emotional. Wasn't angry. He was prepared. And that made him dangerous in a different way. Because this wasn't going to be a fight of voices. It was going to be a fight of proof. And somewhere in that quiet courtroom, 2 little girls sat waiting for someone to decide if they were real enough to stay. The courtroom door closed softly behind them. No noise. No drama. Just the quiet weight of decisions that didn't need to be loud to change lives. The judge entered, composed, unreadable. Everyone stood. Then sat. Papers shifted. Pens aligned. And just like that, it began. This is an emergency caregiver review, the judge said, her voice steady, controlled. We are here to determine temporary placement pending identity verification. Temporary. The word settled in the room like something fragile. Dorian Pike's attorney stood first. Confident. Polished. Your Honor, my client is the legal guardian of record. These children should be returned to him immediately. Returned. Like they had ever been with him. Noah rose slowly. Come. Precise. Your Honor, guardianship on record does not equal guardianship in practice. The judge looked up. Explain. Noah didn't rush. He laid it out clearly. No school enrollment. No medical records. No housing documentation. No evidence of care. Pike shifted slightly in his seat. Not uncomfortable. Just adjusting. The system failed me, Pike said smoothly. Noah didn't raise his voice. The system failed the children. A pause. The judge turned toward Maris. Miss Calder. Maris stood. Her tone balanced. Professional, but human. The children are safe in Mr. Vale's care. stable environment, consistent routine, emotional improvement. She paused, then added quietly. They also demonstrate learned behavior of preparing to leave when they sense uncertainty. The room stilled. Because that wasn't just a detail. That was damage. The judge's gaze moved to Cashin. Mr. Vale. Cashin stood. Not like a billionaire. Not like a man used to winning. Just present. Why do you want these children in your care? Cashin didn't speak immediately. He looked at Lenny and Nova. Small. Still. Holding hands like that was the only thing that couldn't be taken. Then he answered. They asked for a place that doesn't send them away. His voice stayed calm. And I can provide that. Legally. Responsibly. The judge watched him carefully. And if oversight is required? Cashin didn't hesitate. I welcome it. A quiet moment passed. Then something unexpected. The judge looked toward the child advocate. May the children speak briefly? The advocate nodded. Nova stood first. Small. But steady. We just want to stay where the rules are kind. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. Lenny stood beside her, holding that folded paper in her hand. Her survival list. I want a name that works everywhere, she said softly. The words didn't sound big, but they filled the room. Because everyone understood what she meant. The judge set her pen down, looked at both girls, then spoke. Temporary caregiver authorization is granted. A breath. Effective immediately. Cashin exhaled slowly. Not relief. Not yet. Just space. The judge continued. Identity verification will proceed under court supervision. Mr. Pike's guardianship is suspended pending review. Pike didn't react outwardly, but something in his posture shifted. Just slightly. Like control had slipped. Lenny squeezed Nova's hand. Nova whispered, We're staying. Cashin leaned closer. Yes. For the first time. There was something new in their voices. Not fear. Not caution. Hope. But it was quiet. Careful. Because hope had never been safe for them before. Outside the courtroom, the air felt different. Lighter. But not steady. Noah walked beside Cashin. We bought time, he said. Cashin nodded. Time is enough. Noah didn't answer. Because they both knew. Time could also be taken away. Back at the penthouse, things didn't return to normal. They shifted. Subtly. The rules Cashin had written stayed on the table. The girls still read them. Still checked them. Like they needed to make sure they hadn't disappeared overnight. That evening, Nova sat on the floor, tracing the words with her finger. No one sends you away without explaining why. She looked up. That's still real. Cashin knelt beside her. It's still real. Lenny sat nearby, holding her folded paper. She didn't open it. Just held it. Can we keep this? She asked quietly. Cashin nodded. As history. Nova tilted her head. We don't need it every day. Cashin smiled faintly. No. But even as the words settled, the system hadn't stopped moving. The next morning, Noah arrived again. Faster this time. More focused. We have to keep building their identity, he said. Witnesses. Records. Anything that proves continuity. Maris joined shortly after. We need corroboration, she added. Places they've been. People who've seen them. Cashin listened. Absorbed. Then nodded. We'll find it. They visited the places the girls had mentioned. Carefully. Respectfully. At the library steps, the librarian remembered them. They never came inside, she said softly. They just sat outside, looking at the books. Cashin felt something twist inside him. Not anger. Something quieter. Something heavier. At the bus station, a worker recognized them too. They stood near the warm air vent, he said. Always polite. Always gone before it got crowded. Noah recorded everything. Dates, times, details. Each piece small, but together, building something real. That night, back at home, Cashin found Nova holding a new sheet of paper. The list, she said. Cashin knelt. What are we adding? Nova thought for a moment, then said slowly, Paper isn't the boss. Cashin felt his throat tighten. That's a good one. Lenny walked over with a marker. Can I write it? Cashin handed it to her. Lenny wrote carefully. Letters uneven, but determined. Paper is not the boss. They both looked at it, like they needed to see it exist, to believe it. Cashin watched them, and for the first time, hope didn't feel distant. It felt close. But the next morning came with another message. Noah's phone buzzed. He read it. His expression didn't change much, but Cashin saw it. What is it? Cashin asked. Noah looked up. Pike filed again. A pause. Expedited review. The word hit the room quietly, but heavily, because this time, the fight wasn't slowing down. It was speeding up, and somewhere between hope and pressure, the next decision was already getting closer. The word expedited didn't sound loud, but it changed the air. Maris closed her folder slowly, thinking through it. That means he's pushing the timeline, she said. He's arguing delay, saying the girls need stability under legal guardianship. Nova looked up from the floor. We have stability. Her voice was small, but certain. Cashin walked over, kneeled beside her. Yes, he said. You do. But the truth sat quietly underneath. Stability had to be proven, not just felt. Noah was already moving again, fingers flying across his laptop. We need one more anchor, he said. Something official. Something the court can't question. Cashin frowned slightly. We already have statements. Statements help, Noah replied. But documents win. Maris nodded. A formal log, a clinic entry, anything tied to a system. Cashin's mind moved quickly. Not like a businessman now. Like someone trying to hold onto something fragile before it slipped. We'll find it, he said again. Later that afternoon, they moved through the city. Not searching blindly. Following threads. Small memories the girls had mentioned without realizing they mattered. At the community center, the building looked ordinary. Plain. Quiet. But to Lenny and Nova, it had once been a place to stand still for a moment. Inside, a volunteer listened carefully, thinking. I remember them, she said slowly. 2 girls, always together. Noah nodded. We have an art day sign-in. The volunteer shook her head. No, another day. She walked to a file cabinet, opened an old binder, flipped through pages that hadn't been touched in a long time. Then her finger stopped. Her expression changed. Here. She turned the page. Names written in uneven letters. Lenny Wren. Nova Wren. Next to them, staff initials. A date. Official. Real. Noah leaned closer immediately. This works. Maris exhaled quietly. It confirms presence. Cashin looked at the names. Small handwriting. Trying to be neat. Trying to matter. And for a moment, he felt something rise in his chest. Not anger. Something deeper. Like a promise forming. Back at the penthouse, the pace picked up again. Noah attached the new record. Updated the filing. Maris prepared her statement. Everything moved with purpose now. But in the middle of all that motion, the girls noticed something. Not the details. Not the legal words. Just the feeling. Nova stood in the hallway, holding the things that are true list. She looked at it for a long time, then called softly, "Cassian." He turned, walked over. "What is it?" She held the paper up. "Can we add something?" Cassian knelt. "Yes." Nova thought carefully, then said, "Paper can't decide everything." Cassian's throat tightened slightly. "That's a good one." Lenny walked up beside her, marker already in her hand. "I'll write it." She pressed the tip down slowly, letters forming one by one. "Paper is not the boss." Nova nodded, satisfied, like something important had been fixed. Cassian looked at those words. Simple, childlike, but stronger than most arguments he had ever heard, because they came from truth. The next morning came too soon. The courthouse again. But this time, faster. More direct. Less room to breathe. In a smaller room nearby, Lenny and Nova sat with their advocate. Soft chairs. A small table. Crayons laid out. A quiet attempt to keep childhood intact, even in the middle of decisions. Nova leaned toward Lenny. "Is this another rule place?" Lenny nodded slightly. "But the judge is kind." Cassian heard that as he stood near the doorway, and something inside him tightened. Because children shouldn't have to measure adults like that. But they did. Because they had learned. Inside the courtroom, Pike was already there. Composed. Like nothing had changed. His attorney stood again. Voice smooth. Careful. Your Honor, the current situation risks instability. The children require consistency under lawful guardianship. It sounded reasonable. Measured. Like concern. Noah stood slowly. "The process is not delayed," he said. "It is being completed correctly." He placed the new document forward. "This confirms continued presence. Verified identity progression." The judge reviewed it, eyes scanning carefully. Pike spoke then. Soft. Controlled. "I never intended harm," he said. "I want what's best for them." The words landed, but not the way he expected. Because now, there was context. The judge looked at him. "Do you have evidence of ongoing care?" A pause. Pike's expression didn't break, but something shifted. "I provided support." Noah stepped in, calm. "Do you have proof of delivery? Any record of interaction?" Silence. Just for a moment. But enough. Maris stood next. "The girls are stable where they are," she said. "They show reduced anxiety. They engage. They trust." She paused, then added softly, "They also show signs of preparing to leave when they sense uncertainty. This indicates past instability." Cassian stayed still. He didn't look at Pike. He didn't look at the judge. He looked at the floor for a second. Because hearing that made everything real in a different way. The judge turned to Cassian again. "You understand this requires continued oversight?" "Yes." "You understand this is not permanent yet?" "Yes." She studied him. "Why are you doing this?" Cassian didn't rush. Didn't dress it up. "Because they shouldn't have to earn a place to stay," he said quietly. A pause. Then the judge nodded. Not dramatically. Just enough. Temporary caregiver authorization remains in place. A breath. Identity restoration continues under supervision. Another pause. Objection noted, but not upheld. Pike's attorney started to speak, but the judge raised her hand slightly. Final. Outside, the tension didn't disappear. It shifted. Noah walked beside Cashin. We held the ground again. Cashin nodded. Is that enough? Noah didn't answer immediately. It's enough for now. Back in the smaller room, Nova looked up the moment Cashin entered. Did we win? Cashin crouched in front of her. We didn't lose. Lenny tilted her head. That's good. Cashin smiled faintly. That's very good. Nova looked at the list in her hand, then back at him. Paper isn't the boss. Cashin nodded. Not today. They walked out together, step by step. No rushing, no fear, just movement forward. But as they reached the exit, Noah's phone buzzed again. He checked it, and this time, he didn't hide the tension. Cashin saw it instantly. What now? Noah looked up. A new filing, he said quietly. Cashin's eyes narrowed. What kind? Noah's voice lowered. One that could change everything again. Noah didn't rush his words. He looked at the screen again, then at Cashin. He's requesting immediate review of identity closure records, he said quietly. He's trying to prove the girls were already processed and dismissed. Cashin's jaw tightened. Dismissed? Maris stepped closer. If that claim holds, she said carefully, he can argue the system already made a determination, and we're interfering. Nova didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling. She reached for Lenny's hand again. Are we being sent away? Cashin crouched immediately. No. He didn't hesitate. But this time, the word carried weight. Because now it had to be proven one last time. The next 2 days didn't feel like days. They felt like something in between. Meetings. Documents. Calls. But beneath all of it, something steady grew. Not fear. Not panic. Something quieter. Something stronger. The truth. At the government office, the final identity restoration appointment waited. No drama. No noise. Just a desk. A clerk. And a system that finally had to decide. Lenny and Nova sat side by side. A juice box in front of them. A coloring page half finished. Small attempts to keep the moment from feeling too big. Cashin stood nearby with Noah. Maris beside them. Everything prepared. Everything aligned. The clerk looked up. We'll proceed with court-supported affidavit and corroborating records. Noah handed over the documents. Carefully. Deliberately. Each page placed like it mattered. Because it did. The clerk reviewed them. One by one. Eyes scanning. Pausing. Moving forward again. Then, a slight shift. There is a partial file, the clerk said. Cashin's focus sharpened. Explain. It shows prior entry, the clerk continued. Names recorded, then marked unverified. Closed. Noah's voice steadied. Closed by whom? The clerk shook her head. That information is restricted. But the closure code indicates the process was never completed. Maris exhaled slowly. That aligns with abandonment of procedure. Cashin's hands tightened slightly, because now it was clear. This wasn't an accident. This was neglect. Quiet. Unnoticed. But real. Noah leaned forward. We request the closure code and timestamp for court review. The clerk nodded. I can provide that. And just like that, the truth began to surface. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just undeniable. Inside the child room, Lenny was writing her name again. Carefully. Each letter placed with effort. The advocate asked gently, "Do you want to keep Ren?" Lenny looked at Nova. Nova nodded once. Lenny answered softly, "Yes." She paused. "It sounds like a bird." The advocate smiled slightly. "Why a bird?" Lenny looked down at her paper. "Because birds aren't stuck." Cashin heard that from the doorway, and something inside him broke quietly, not in pain, in understanding. The clerk returned. "Forms ready. We can proceed with provisional documentation." Noah nodded. "That's enough to open access." Maris added, "School, health care, stability." Cashin didn't speak. He watched the girls. 2 children who had learned to survive without asking, now being given something they had never had. Recognition. The process moved forward. Signatures. Verifications. Witness confirmations. Each step small, but together, permanent. At the final review, the courtroom felt different. Not tense. Not heavy. Just ready. The judge reviewed the documents. Community records. Witness statements. The closure code. Everything laid out. Clear. Complete. Pike stood across the room. No longer confident. Just present. His attorney made one last attempt. "Your Honor, identity remains provisional. Permanence should be delayed." Noah stood, calm as ever. "Permanence is not a reward for children," he said. "It is the foundation they grow on." The room stilled. Because that wasn't argument. That was truth. The judge looked at Cashin. "This will require long-term responsibility." Cashin didn't hesitate. "I'm not here for a moment." She nodded once. Then turned to Maris. "Do you believe this placement serves the children's best interest?" Maris answered clearly, "Yes." A pause. Then the judge looked at Pike. "You were given the opportunity to demonstrate care. You provided none." Pike didn't respond, because there was nothing left to say. The judge set her pen down. Temporary caregiver authorization will transition to extended court-approved guardianship pending adoption proceedings. A breath. The children's identities will be finalized under this court's supervision. And then, the line that changed everything. These children will not be moved again without cause. Silence. Then something softer. Relief. Not loud. Not overwhelming. Just real. Outside, the air felt different. Lighter. Lenny and Nova stood with their small folder. Inside it, their names. Official. Recognized. Nova looked at the page. "It has our names." Lenny traced the letters. "It works." Noah smiled quietly. "It works everywhere." Nova looked up. "Everywhere." Maris knelt beside them. "School. Doctors. Any place that matters." Lenny looked at Cashin. "So we don't have to say sorry and go?" Cashin swallowed. "No." His voice softer now. "You don't." Nova reached for his hand. Didn't ask. Just took it. "Do we still keep Ren?" Cashin looked at Maris. At Noah. Then back at the girls. "Yes," he said gently. "We'll make it official." Lenny smiled slightly. "Birds can fly." Nova added quietly. "And they have nests." Cashin's eyes warmed. "Yes," he said. "And you have one." On the drive home, rain began again. Soft this time. Gentle. As they passed the bridge, Cashin asked the driver to stop. The girls stepped out slowly. Not afraid. Not cold. Just present. Nova looked around. This is Pillar 3. Lenny nodded, holding the folder close. Cashin stood beside them. They didn't stay long. They didn't need to. This place isn't home, Nova said. No, Cashin replied. It never should have been. Lenny looked at the folder again. Now we have a name that works. Cashin crouched to their level. And a home that stays. Nova leaned into Lenny. Let's go to our nest. Cashin stood. One hand for each of them. Yeah, he said softly. Let's go. And as they walked away, the bridge didn't follow. It stayed behind. Just steel. Just concrete. No longer a place they belonged to. Because in the end, it wasn't money that saved them. It wasn't power. It was someone choosing to stay, when leaving would have been easier. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.